Welcome. Today we are going to be talking about the importance of providing career and educational guidance for low SES students in higher education by illustrating practical examples and initiatives to inform and identify best practices that should be addressed and implemented by universities to support low SES students in their higher education experience and to reduce levels of academic abandonment. Understanding the importance of career and educational guidance for students nowadays is vital, considering the impact they will have on future society and future generations. However, access to higher education and valid professional guidance is not always a possibility. In fact, there are large inequalities between certain members of the student communities regarding their access to educational paths, financial and economic instability, disability issues, and socio-familial contexts. These topics are a global phenomenon that affects both MEDCs, more economically developed countries, and LEDCs, lesser economically developed countries. Access to higher education, and more specifically to the development of skills that are necessary for an effective employability and professional training, is a topic that should be addressed and discussed on different levels. We should comprehend how to best recognize certain mechanisms that are being perpetuated in higher educational institutions and provide examples of how to overcome and implement initiatives and strategies to battle this inequality. Inequalities in the higher education sector take on a lot of different forms and characteristics. However, we will be focusing on low SES students currently enrolled in higher education and who are either struggling to continue or thinking about abandoning their studies for lack of resources or other motivations connected to their status. The term low SES is an acronym for low socioeconomic status, which describes individuals or families who have limited financial resources and that may face challenges related to poverty. The exact origin of the term is not certain, however, it can be traced back to the 60s and 70s when scholars began to study the relationship between socioeconomic status and academic achievement. The term low SES students likely emerged to refer to students from economically disadvantaged backgrounds, which typically includes lower levels of income, education, and occupation. It is difficult to identify a universal set of characteristics that define low SES students, as there is significant diversity within and across countries. However, some common characteristics associated with low SES students include limited access to resources, financial constraints, poor health and nutrition, taking time off their studies, and higher risk of social exclusion. It is important to note that these characteristics are not universal and may vary depending on the specific country or region within Europe, as well as individual factors such as family structure, immigration status, and economic conditions. There is significant diversity and individual variation within all socioeconomic groups. Therefore, identifying the core areas that universities should address is fundamental, as it makes it easier to implement and tailor good practices and strategies to address these topics. This is what we will do in the following parts of this lecture, and they include the following areas: financial support, academic support, career guidance, and development paths. We have subdivided the different support systems, which thankfully are already being implemented in many universities across Europe. The examples that follow aim to inform and provide insight as to what other universities should strive to include in their best practices when trying to support low SES students in achieving academic inclusion and fostering their success. Let's begin with the financial aspect, as it can be considered an aggravating factor for many low SES students. The importance of financial support systems clearly becomes vital to ensure student access and success in their higher education path. Whether we are talking about scholarships, grants, or emergency funds, there are many universities out there who support their students and provide active financial aid. However, we must keep in consideration that the extent of support that universities can provide varies enormously from institution to institution. The financial support must be measured against and applied based on the resources and internal policies that each university has in place, and therefore is very difficult to regulate and standardize. What follows are examples of financial support systems that some universities in Europe have been implementing over the years, and which could be taken into consideration. For example, the University of Padua in Italy offers several scholarships to support students, including part-time job opportunities, opportunities for refugees and people fleeing from war and economic hardship, and they also offer partial or total fee waivers for low-income students. A similar initiative can be seen with the Lund University Hardship Scholarship, which can be awarded to students of the university whose financial situation has changed dramatically since they started their studies. These specific funds for economic hardship were actually initiated as a response for students who were encountering financial hardship and struggling to manage their tuition fee payments, for example, due to problems arising from the COVID-19 pandemic or other unexpected occurrences during their studies. There are also organizations and institutions in place that collaborate with universities to support students. For example, the ASVA Student Union in Amsterdam, that represents the interests of both UVA and AUAS students, and which collaborates with the executive boards of the two universities, proactively helps and supports students during their studies. The participation fee is extremely accessible, €15 for the first year and then $12.50 for every following year. With this fee, however, students can benefit from initiatives such as accessible transportation through their legal cheap bike scheme, access to trainings from the ASVA Academy, which includes specific courses such as learning how to master Photoshop to improve digital skills, and they even include services for legal help for troubles that students may have with landlords or issues that may arise during their educational career. Moreover, they also provide financial support for basic needs such as grocery shopping and access to dentist appointments with discounts. All these initiatives clearly take the students' well-being into account at 360 degrees, offering support to ensure that they may be able to focus on their studies without having to worry about funding or suffering from financial stress. The University of Lisbon is yet another great example of social inclusivity and providing support to the students at their university who require extra financial help. They have a whole autonomous department of their university called SASU Lisboa, Social Services of the University, which aims to support its students with social action policies in accordance with the strategy driven by the university's governing bodies. They offer a social conscience scholarship for students who, during their academic year, are in a situation of proven economic insufficiency. The aim of this support is to combat school dropout and failure and contribute to the acquisition of socially useful transversal skills. Furthermore, they have an extraordinary accommodation support for housing for displaced higher education students who are beneficiaries of a family allowance but who are not social action grant holders. Lastly, the University of Warsaw provides significant scholarships for its students, and some of them specifically target and aid low-income students. One of them is a scholarship for people with disabilities, but also the social scholarship for refugee students, or if you're a migrant worker with EU membership status, which includes the family of the potential scholarship holder. This kind of support may be vital for low-SES students coming from a migrant or refugee context who also have a family to support or are caretakers for family members. As can be seen, financial support is extremely important for all low-SES students, even though it is not the only kind of support which can make a difference regarding access to education and future opportunities. In fact, there are also many universities who have implemented support mechanisms focusing on fostering academic success. Supporting low-SES students academically is just as important as supporting them financially, as it allows them to be accompanied throughout their studies and makes them feel like they also have a support system to help them with their studying and resources. Some initiatives, such as the one presented by the Università di Firenze back in 2022, include creating physical spaces such as the one in Campus Nuvoli, where low-SES and fragile students from difficult social backgrounds can request study support, technological aids, learning materials in alternative formats, tutoring services, counselling, and guidance. A noteworthy initiative was conducted by the University of Padua back in December 2021, when they created a digital guide for students with learning disabilities on their website, in collaboration with Arcus, the European University Alliance, entitled "Is Digital Inclusion Possible? Hints and Tricks for Creating Accessible Digital Contents." Initiatives like this are important because if teaching has become more digital since COVID-19, then images, words, web page layouts, fonts, sounds, and even subtitles on audiovisual materials are even more of critical importance for students who struggle or who do not have the same access to learning material. Similarly, the University of Hamburg in Germany created a digital guide, which included recommendations and regulations for people balancing studies and family life, which was created in response to the COVID pandemic to help all students in successfully completing their coursework and exams, especially with digital courses, which, in the case of some students, created insurmountable hurdles for students in special circumstances. The guide was created as a handout for teaching staff and explained the different hurdles students may be facing regarding synchronous online lectures or seminars, inaccessible academic documents, completing coursework in virtual teams, learning videos and films and podcasts. For each of these areas, they outlined the specific target persona who may be affected by their condition or situation, and then offered insights into how they could help these students access the material despite their situation. Moreover, the Università di Bologna participated in an event called TICKET, Transnational Intercultural Competence Through Knowledge Exchange and Training, which aimed to address the increasing diversity of higher education by helping educators and teaching staff in enhancing their intercultural competence to tackle discrimination, segregation, and racism by equipping staff with skills to help them engage with underrepresented and disadvantaged students such as BME, LGBTQ+, and people with disabilities. This can be interpreted as a proactive initiative to contrast the social, ethnic, and disability-related exclusion that low SES students may have to deal with during their studies, and therefore, having educators and higher education staff who are more aware of these students certainly makes the learning environment more inclusive and welcoming. Lastly, another example of academic initiatives can be seen by the University of Catalunya and the importance they have been given to digital training for their teaching staff since COVID-19 hit in 2020. Their main claim was that it is not sufficient to invest in digital technologies because for them it is fundamental and normal for a university environment to have access to such instruments. What is vital for them was having a pedagogical body that was also able to use them and engage their students in a meaningful learning process. This is important as it cannot be taken for granted that students have access to technology, but at the same time it also addresses the important topic that knowledge holders, such as higher education professors, may not be able to transfer their knowledge or engage in academic debate with their students because of their own lack of digital skills. The problem is that this creates a vicious cycle of misinformation and misguided knowledge transfer, which hinders student success and academic achievement and therefore limits their future opportunities. Overall, it becomes evident how academic support for low SES students is fundamental to ensure that they are not left alone throughout their studies, and that their needs are addressed to make them experience a full academic career like their high SES counterparts. Next, it is important to address career guidance as a huge part of university academic paths and processes, as it provides support to students during their university lives and prepares them for what is to come in their future. Some universities have dedicated part of their approach to career guidance to supporting students with disabilities, who are often part of the low SES student community, as previously mentioned, and especially their access to the professional sector, as will be seen in the following slides. Initiatives include special career guidance and networking activities. For example, the Université Sorbonne de Paris provides services for career success such as proactive support in contacting companies, expert advice and interviews practice, and they also aid students with disabilities in obtaining recognition of the status of disabled worker to help them access the job market. Other initiatives include specific career and recruitment fairs aimed at supporting students with disabilities. For example, UCL Career Fairs Early Access for Students with Disabilities is a moment specifically aimed at allowing students with disabilities or long-term health conditions the possibility to visit the fairs before they get busy, therefore helping disadvantaged students who may struggle during peak visiting time at large events. Further still, the Virtual Career Fair for People with Disabilities, organised by Gwynedd Mercy University, is another example of how Career Services Department can facilitate access to student-company encounters, even for people with mobility issues or other special needs, using the power of technology and digital tools to guarantee access. In Italy instead, the Università degli Studi di Roma Tor Vergata, back in November 2022, organised a Diversity Day, which is dedicated to the insertion and job inclusion of people with disabilities. A similar initiative was held by the Università di Milano Bicocca, as they also held a Diversity Day in 2022 dedicated to students and graduates with disabilities, which also included a moment where students and recruiters shared a discussion regarding the difficulties that both encounter when dealing with selection processes, recruiting and job hunting. Moments like these are important because they show students how recruiters may respond and struggle with identifying and finding the right people for their companies. It creates an environment of shared responsibility that may provide the necessary insight for both and to improve their hiring and selection processes to be more inclusive and effective. Let us not forget that even having scholarships like the Erasmus Plus traineeships program or internal scholarships implemented by each university to favour international internship opportunities can have a significantly positive impact on low SES students who might otherwise shy away from applying if they know they haven't got the funds to consider internship opportunities abroad. The scholarships should target low SES students or find a way to help them score higher in the final rankings before awarding the scholarships. As shown, career guidance initiatives are important but not sufficient to accompany low SES students in their journey, and for this reason it is also recommended that universities include development paths for students to explore and increase their potential and talent as part of their best practices. The interventions related to the development that we are including in the Dig to Ink project and that we are designing for trainers show paths that will make a great impact on the support for low-SES students. The idea belongs to the post-pandemic context, characterized by disorientation, insecurity, and lack of forward thinking. We are considering students in entry, exit phase, and especially in the stage when the educational cycle is ongoing, usually the most difficult part. The impact of online courses, where there are differences both due to missing digital tools and support within the families, lead to a sense of disorientation and remoteness in most learners. Hence, it becomes important to focus on the creation of best practices during the online training, on the trainer and student relation or students and groups, stakeholders through whom to develop new strategies, aimed at 1. Stimulating and guiding learners to become autonomous and aware in accepting and managing supportive tools, and 2. Understanding the missed opportunities when they maintain their status quo without improving it. The project should be created with the aim of giving practical and inclusive alternatives to make the university path more meritocratic and sustainable. The first goal is to make it the student's choice to decide whether to actively participate, hence the practical perspective, by accepting the offer of the tools or to continue their academic journey without support, which at certain times may be demanding and challenging. The second goal is to prevent school dropouts. Smart goal setting according to the stage of the learning journey. In setting up the lesson, it is important to be clear about the objective of the time invested, especially in this type of support for low-achieving students who need to take away as many useful tools as possible. In this regard, it is necessary to make the goal of the lesson as practical and complete as possible, considering elements that students must be able to touch with their own hands. In fact, the key points are concreteness, what is the change the trainers will achieve from this experience, engagement, awareness that the support is handled by trainers, but insisting that students must be active learners. Timeline journey. Each person needs to see the educational path as a dynamic but limited time where students invest to achieve their goals, to not waste energy or lose the motivation, which is composed by a starting point, learning journey and progress, closeness to final achievement. Meaning, what are the benefits in terms of career experience they will gain from getting such support? Sustainability, the importance of developing their own strategies for overcoming obstacles on their own. Measurability, using the ability to measure progress, which is important for students. The trainer must be able to apply this kind of approach by making the students understand that the training course is dynamic and that the learning stage they are in must be considered. That's why this career development project aspires to make trainers aware and autonomous to be prepared to teach a multifaceted category of people. Group discussions are another important tool for learners for several reasons, as they offer a range of educational and developmental benefits. Critical thinking, active learning, exposure to diversity that helps understanding that there are other contexts in the same disadvantaged learning condition, social skills development, as it is important for personal empowerment and contributes to the creation of a supportive learning community, increased confidence. In summary, group discussions play a crucial role in the overall development of learners to turn them into workers that will become adaptable, continuously learning new skills and able to collaborate effectively with others. Using the Johari matrix in this masterclass can help individuals understand their interpersonal relationships and communication. It consists of a 4-quadrant grid, and each quadrant represents a different area of information or behavior. The model is based on the idea that there are aspects of ourselves that are known to ourselves and others, and there are aspects that are unknown to either ourselves or others. The goal is to increase the size of the open area known to self and others by sharing information and improving communication. The communication and the feedback will help reduce the distance between trainers and disadvantaged learners, supporting their feelings and sharing all the troubles they must overcome difficulties in the online training environment. Expected skills to create creativity, collaboration, and interaction within the learners group contexts are nonverbal communication and body language, empathy, active listening, and learning to lead the group. Lastly, an action plan gives the opportunity to students to remain focused and prepared to deal with obstacles and have a strategy ready to overcome the situation when it is difficult. It can also be useful in online learning or in the support of low-SES students, as it can help trainers face any kind of situation, including managerial, emotional, and relational skills, thought out in a practical way. Creating an effective action plan involves breaking down a large goal into specific, manageable tasks and outlining the steps needed to achieve them. Breaking down a goal into smaller one, more manageable objectives contributes to achieving the goal in a more realistic and practical way. A starting structure can be the one with 3 simple questions that have the aim to call a person to action, such as, what will you do? From when? Who or what will support you? In conclusion, an action plan applied to the theory can help trainers become more confident in supporting students develop their skills and actively react to the obstacles generated by a disadvantaged background, such as limited internet access, isolation, awkward geographic locations, etc. The experience related to the digital skills training for both students and educators will prepare them not only to decrease the percentage of student dropouts, but also for the evolving job market. This is why including developmental paths, SMART goal setting, group discussions, and forward-looking action plans for low SES students will only increase their ability to succeed in education and unlock their potential. Overall, what can be seen is that there are a lot of potential difficulties and hurdles that low SES students may encounter during their studies in higher education institutions. The ones analysed here include aspects such as financial problems, psychosocial issues, social and ethnic exclusion, and career and developmental hurdles. All these aspects contribute and affect academic success, and even the rate of academic abandonment for many low SES students who do not receive the correct support during their academic career. This is precisely why support systems implemented by higher education institutions become so vitally important to low SES students, whether they are struggling with financial, social, or health issues during their studies. What we have tried to show in this presentation is that many universities in Europe have provided some form of initiative or project implementation to support low SES students. It is important to understand that all universities should be implementing a mix of initiatives to achieve better inclusion and access for low SES students, and that they should all be setting up good practices to ensure this occurs systematically. Thank you very much for listening. The presentation has now ended. Have a lovely day.